So primary elections are happening in Indiana and Ohio today, two states where redistricting has become a top issue, and they're not the only places where new voting maps could have an impact this midterm season. Joining us this morning is CBS News Executive Director of Elections and Surveys, Anthony Salvanto. Good to see you.
How are you?
All right, so let's start with Louisiana. Explain that ruling from the Supreme Court on that landmark decision striking down the state's redrawn congressional map.
So the short answer to that, Vlad, is that Louisiana is going to end up redrawing its maps. And what I'm showing you here is the red and blue Republican voting districts and two, in this case, Democratic voting districts. But this is as a result of the VRA ruling. And what that means, the background here is that since the Voting Rights Act, the court previously has interpreted that to mean that when states draw their districts, they can't do so in a way that, in the judgment of those, in the courts, that might dilute the voting power of minority voters, including these states. So with this court ruling now, Louisiana is going to go back and they're going to redraw these districts. And the net here could be that both of these are majority minority districts. Black voters here, this could go away. At least one of them could go away.
Also want to talk about Florida, right? Because the same day that ruling came down, Governor Ron DeSantis also signed into a redrawing of the congressional map. What's the latest there?
So I'm going to show you this. Florida in context, you mentioned at the top Indiana and Ohio. This is notable because, yes, the Republicans could gain a seat, maybe a few more out of Ohio due to their redistricting. Indiana did not. And yes, as some politicos have reported, that's drawn the ire in some respects of the White House. Florida now is moving to redraw its districts and try to net the Republicans now maybe 3, maybe 4 seats. The issue here is that this, as apart from the Voting Rights Act, I'm going to show you this because I want to sort of explain what I mean by gerrymandering or redistricting. What happens is we've got, say, in this abstract, blue voters, red voters. If you draw districts where, say, for example, you take blue voters and you put them in a district where they're outnumbered by red, that's a Republican gerrymander, and you could do the opposite and say put a bunch of blue voters together with just a few red ones, and they're outnumbered as well. That's how this process works, and that is now, given the Supreme Court rulings, okay if it's partisan. And that's where that comes down, and that's one of the reasons you see all these districts and redistricting this cycle happening so much in all these states.
So then what kind of impact is this expected to have on the midterms more broadly?
So I'm going to go back to this map over here, and we're not done yet, again, given that VRA ruling. But what you've seen, we covered Texas and their redraw of the map. Maybe that nets Republicans some other states, North Carolina, and we just talked about Florida. The Democrats, quite famously, passed Prop 50. They might get a gain in California, some out of Virginia, too. So that back and forth on the political axis here means that you see these potential gains for each party. Bottom line here, this happens in part because, remember, voters tend to vote for the same party all the time. We talk a lot about swing voters, but the fact is that more than 90% of voters who are partisan are going to vote for their same party. Most Congress people get reelected when they run. So all of that, frankly, they can do this redistricting partly because those voters vote the same way every time. Makes it easier for them to draw the lines.
But what happens, Anthony, when people who don't vote often, so who are not calculated or incorporated into these into polling and into statistics that we look at that give us a sense of how a race is going, what happens when they turn up at the polls?
Well, that could skew all of this. And I think the other part of this is there are assumptions made here. I'll take one example, Hispanic voters. A lot of them shifted toward the Republicans in 2024. In a lot of these districts, in Florida, in Texas, et cetera, the Republican lines kind of assume that those Hispanic voters are going to stay with the Republican Party. If they don't, to your point, all of these calculations might go the other way, it might backfire, and in the reverse with some demo groups for Democrats as well. Nothing is certain. That is for sure.
Yeah. Always great to have your expertise, my friend. Thank you very much, Anthony Salvanto.